Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another reaction video. Today we're going to be reacting to more Oversimplified, but this time it's going to be about the Cold War. Now, we reacted to Oversimplified when he made World War One. Then we moved on to Hitler. Then then we moved on to World War Two, and then now we're on to what's this called? The Cold War by Oversimplified Part One. Now, if you want to like and subscribe to Oversimplified, I'll send his links down in the description of this video, in case you want to go see this for yourself. If not, if you want to see it if you want to watch this with me, then I suggest watching this video instead. But yeah, either way, I'm just gonna put his links down in the description. If you subscribe to Oversimplified, he's pretty talented. From what I've seen, he's a pretty talented guy from what I've observed so far. So yeah, let's get right onto the Cold War now. I'm assuming, well, obviously it's like a political thing against like the US and the USSR, also known as the Soviet Union. All I've known is that any like war that America has been, like the Korean War, the Vietnam War, Russia or the Soviet Union had always been on the opposite side of it because, you know, at the time, Russia was a communist country, so, yeah. That's basically the era of the Cold War, but we're going to learn more about it. So yeah, let's get right onto it. I'm going to stop rambling and click on play.
I've decided that in order to sell more merch, I should do a face reveal wearing some of it. So are you ready? Here we go. Boom. New Minimalist and Cold War merch available now, and get the new limited edition Churchill character pin before it sells out, with more characters coming in the future. Link in the description down below. The year is 1917. Fighting rages on the Eastern Front of the First World War.
Hold on, I just gotta see if everything's in order. Okay, yes, everything is good. Oh, sorry, my bad. The sound was off. My bad. My bad, gang.
Germany and Russia are on the brink of collapse. Soldier, I need you to bring me this man. Got it. Found him, sir. What? No, not Lenin. Lenin, the Russian communist. What? Why would I need a beetle? Lenin, the Russian communist. He was exiled to Switzerland. You know what? I'll do it myself.
So he was exiled to Switzerland.
Who wants to start a revolution?
I'm snapping nice.
God damn it. This is the last thing I want to do.
Score up to $3,000 bonus
Okay.
on select vehicles during the Mitsubishi factory clearance.
Alright, Cold War, Oversimplified.
The Germans put Lenin on a train and sent him all the way back to Russia, hoping he and his mates would create an internal crisis. And create an internal crisis they did. The government was overthrown, and Lenin was in charge. He immediately pulled out of the First World War, made the country communist, started a 3-year-long civil war, got shot, broke the economy, caused a famine, and then he died. On his deathbed he said, "Hey man, tell whoever's in charge of giving people jobs not to let that jerk Stalin become the next leader." By the way, who did I put in charge of giving people
Stalin.
jobs? That would be Stalin, sir.
Oh my
Stalin was a rising force in the Communist Party. He still had some opponents, but conveniently, all of them were arrested or disappeared. So that was lucky. And so Stalin took
what a
over.
coincidence.
He implemented his 5-year plans, which transformed the country from an agriculture-based economy to an industrial one. And
Yeah.
like Lenin before him, he reigned with terror. Anyone who dared criticize or oppose him would either be killed or left to rot in the horrendous Soviet work camps. Then a short man with a silly mustache tried to take over the world, punched the Russians all the way to Moscow, and then the Russians, with some help from their faithful ally, the Winter, punched them all the way back to Berlin. At this point, being allies, America, the UK, and the Soviet Union were good chums. They held a couple of conferences near the end of the war to decide what would happen next. Hey Stalin, after all your trials and tribulation, you must be pretty happy to be standing here in Berlin. Tsar Alexander made it all the way to Paris. Hey, just give me a second. Hey man, I think something's up with Stalin. I know, right? What should we do? Shall I tell him about the bomb? Yeah, Tell him about the bomb.
See, it just
That
shows
will
that
scare him.
even when you work
So
with
we got this
someone,
crazy
or
new big
you
A-bomb
like
that
on
can
the
destroy
same
an
team,
entire city in one go. Yes, my
sometimes you
spies
can't
told me
trust the
already.
person
Oh
with
wait,
you, so
I meant to act
that's-
surprised.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. He already knew. How?
Spies.
Am I sure I want to send nuclear secrets via unsecure public coffee shop Wi-Fi? Am I ever? Dude, use a VPN. And speaking of VPNs, if, like me, you take
I'm gonna
internet
skip
safety
this.
seriously, then you need NordVPN for limited time. Slow. Now where America dropped their big A-bomb on Japan and World War II...
Further back here.
Does the A stand for atomic or ass? Then America dropped their big A-bomb on Japan, and World War II officially came to
Yeah,
an end.
Hiroshima
Hooray,
and
we won!
Nagasaki.
Okay, so now it's time to establish the New World Order. Stalin, you're in charge of Eastern Europe. Now, we want you to let them all hold elections. Oh yes, of course.
Biggest
elections.
mistake you could
And
ever
these
say.
elections
You're
will
in
be free
charge
and
of
fair,
Eastern
right?
Europe.
Oh yes, certainly. Free and fair. Definitely free and fair. Communist, 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 communist. If that's not free and fair, I don't know what is. Throughout Eastern Europe, Soviet puppet governments were established as a buffer zone between the USSR and the West, with Churchill proclaiming an Iron Curtain had descended across the continent. The relationship between the old allies was deteriorating fast.
Real
Over the
quick
next
too.
few years, the British intervened in the Greek Civil War to prevent a communist takeover. In Turkey, the Russians began demanding more control of Turkey's sea access routes, which prompted the US to send their largest battleship to Turkey for a friendly visit. After World War II, Iran was now occupied by both the Soviets and the British, with an agreement to both pull out once the war was over. The British pulled out. Stalin was like, you know what? I think I might stick around. All in favor of kicking Russia out of Iran? You want to know something? You guys suck. Pressure from the UN forced
Do
the
we still
Soviets
have
to leave,
that, the
and with the
UN
establishment of
Security
NATO,
Council?
the Soviets had no
I'm
doubt
pretty sure
that the
we
West
do,
was
but
out
it's
to
mainly,
encircle and destroy them. And America
NATO-
announced the
NATO
Truman
that's
Doctrine, in which they
overthrown that.
basically said, those guys are not cool, cannot be trusted, and we will do everything we can to prevent the spread of communism around the world. Many view this moment as the official declaration of the Cold War.
Yeah.
Back in Europe, everyone was living in a post-apocalyptic void brought on by the Second World War. Cities reduced to rubble, not enough food. It was terrible. This is great. The more they suffer, the more likely it is they'll turn to communism. Dude, you're really messed up.
It is.
What's wrong with you? My father used to punish me severely. America realized what was going on and quickly made a move. Under the Marshall Plan, they sent $12 billion to Western Europe for its economic recovery. The countries of Stalin's Eastern Bloc looked on with envy. Hey, Czechoslovakia, you want to come get some economic aid? Yeah, but I have to check with my mom first. Sorry, America. I can't come. This was a full-on economic battle raging between capitalism and communism in Europe. If the Western nations developed faster and better than the East, that would be a defeat for Stalin. So he set up his own rival economic recovery plan, which he called Comecon, and he also set up Common Form, which gave him more political control over the Eastern Bloc. But nowhere did this economic battle rage harder than in the city of Berlin. Caught over 100 miles behind Soviet lines, the city had been divided up between the Allies, and the western segments were still under Western control. East Berliners could travel freely to West Berlin, see the economic prosperity and think, maybe this communism thing ain't so great after all. I'm gonna have fun tonight. You're home late. Oh, Stalin. I was just out with my friends. Friends? You stink of capitalism! You're out engaging in imperialist debauchery again! I swear, Ivan, I can't keep doing this. Stalin wanted the West.
See, this is what I like about OverSimplified. Like, they take good knowledge and good facts from history, and they turn it into this... Sometimes turn it into little scenarios that make it more intriguing, more interesting, that you want to learn about. It's pretty cool that they managed to do that, which is thumbs up for OverSimplified for doing that, because over time they've gained a good audience from doing this. So it's a good strategy to like take something that's kind of not so hype but not so boring, and to turn it to very, you know, just entertaining to learn about. So it's you know, pretty good.
Out. So he said, hey, guess what? I'm blockading all of your supply routes to West Berlin. What are you gonna do about it? I suppose we'll just fly the supplies in. Alright, Truman. You win this round. The Berlin airlift was an incredible undertaking and a major success for the Western Allies, and Stalin ended his blockade of West Berlin. His aggressive actions worried the West, but not as much as this did. The Soviet Union had developed their very own atomic bomb. The USA no longer had a nuclear monopoly. The world now knew that if a major war broke out between the two superpowers, it would be more destructive than anyone could imagine.
Yeah, no shit, because all of Eastern Europe, they have no choice. They're on frickin' the Soviets' side. They're on their side, and I'm assuming, with the Western European countries, like, compared to Eastern Europe, it's very little, compared to what they have. So it's, yeah, if a major war did break out, it would have been very interesting to see, and very destructive to see what the outcome could have been on who would have won. So yeah, it was during a time like this when tensions were high, yeah, pretty close. It was there was a lot of close causes, but well, yeah, I hope it doesn't happen now, considering there's a lot of political stuff going on. I'm not going to talk about it because, I don't want people up my ass after, if they watch this video. But, yeah, if there's nothing going on and you live another day to live, it's good miracle, that is.
So it was comforting when Stalin came out and said that war between the Soviet Union and the West was unlikely. Oh, wait, inevitable. He said it was inevitable. Hey, you know who I haven't checked in on in a while? My good friend China. Whoa, what happened to you? What happened to them was a full-blown civil war that had been going on since 1927.
Yeah.
The People's Liberation Army, under the leadership of Mao Zedong, successfully defeated the Republic of China, who fled to Taiwan. The now communist China and the Soviet Union signed a mutual defense treaty. This was terrible news for the West. But wait. There's more. After the Second World War, Korea was divided along the 38th parallel. In the north, the Soviets set up a communist regime.
And this is
in
where
the
the
south,
Korean War
America set
started.
up an anti-communist regime.
Communist
Both were
play.
led by very sweet-looking old men, but don't let that deceive you. They were both ruthless dictators, and both dreamed of reuniting Korea under their own regime. Now that he had the bomb, Stalin was feeling a little more cocky, and he finally gave Kim permission to attack. The North launched a surprise invasion of the South on June 25th, 1950. With Soviet aid, the North Koreans steamrolled through, taking Seoul in just 3 days and replacing one ruthless dictator with another. The UN were freaking out and quickly created an emergency force made up of troops from 16 countries to defend the South.
There's Australia
The West still
and
held
New
the
Zealand.
South and made landings
And
at
a few other
Incheon near
countries.
Seoul. They pushed the North Koreans out of Seoul, replacing the ruthless dictator that had replaced the first ruthless dictator with the same ruthless dictator that had previously been replaced by the new ruthless dictator. And the West then continued all the way up the Korean peninsula. At this point, China was getting worried that the UN may just keep going. The US had sent this guy to lead the operation. After winning the Pacific theater of World War II, General Douglas MacArthur's head was big, and his balls were bigger. He reassured President Truman that there was absolutely no way at all that the Chinese would ever get involved. Meanwhile, 500,000 Chinese troops were crossing into
They
Korea.
got involved,
Nuke 'em.
yes.
No. Nuke 'em. No. Ah, come on. You're fired. The US considered the nuclear option, but now that the Soviets also had the bomb, they didn't want to risk all-out global destruction.
Yeah.
The communists pushed the West
That
right
would
back
make
almost to
sense.
the exact same spot they had all started from, and they ended up in a stalemate, where they remained until both sides
Because
finally
if-
agreed to work
if you
towards a
fight-
peace settlement.
Because if you fight back with something bigger, that's what you call karma. Something's gonna come back to bite you in the ass.
in 20
You know,
Oh, God
the
damn
only
it.
place you can watch footy live this
Well, let's fucking
Saturday
skip
is
this.
Fox Footy.
2018. Back in America, Americans decided they wanted a new president who would be tough on communism.
Yeah.
So they elected famed World War II General Eisenhower, who was really hard to draw. It's 1953. Hey Stalin, how you doing? Oh, he's dead. He had a cerebral hemorrhage and his reign of terror kinda came back to bite him in the ass, because he had imprisoned all of his best doctors, and those that were left were too terrified to treat him. The new leader, Nikita Khrushchev, called a meeting and said, "Hey guys, you know how Stalin was imprisoning and murdering us all for doing basically nothing? Yeah, he was kind of a jerk. I'm really not sure how this is news to you." Khrushchev went on a campaign of de-Stalinization. Statues of Stalin were taken down, Stalingrad was renamed, and Khrushchev announced that he wanted the Soviet people to be happy and would allow greater freedom in the Soviet Union. So how did that work out? Well, an uprising in East Germany was brutally
It sorta
suppressed,
worked,
a
but not
revolution
really.
in Hungary was brutally suppressed, and demonstrations in Poland were brutally suppressed. Although he did finally allow some mild reforms. Back in the Soviet Union, he permitted more cultural expression, but then began
'Cause they
banning
let-
stuff
they-
based on his
they
own
let go
personal
of some
taste.
things, but they
Modern
were
art
still
looks
kind
like a
of
child
uptight.
urinated
Like
on a
for this-
canvas.
like
Banned.
this, for
Jazz
example.
music sounds like the feeling of needing to fart. Banned. Your poetry is really depressing. How could anyone in the Soviet Union be depressed? You're banned. Khrushchev wanted the Soviet people to be happy, but not like that.
Yeah.
Or that. Or that. Young people began enjoying a boring Western pop culture.
Yeah, you would think at this point with a new leader that, my people, they want to be happy. I'm gonna let them be happy, right? it's yeah, sometimes, you know, some things aren't as promised as what it sounds, I guess.
Culture. Son, remove that disgusting imperialist apparel at once. Shut up, Dad. You can't tell me what to do. Well, would you look at that? Turns out he can tell me what to do. The West had initially liked the cut of Khrushchev's jib, but world events soon soured relations even more. The two sides were spying on each other a whole lot throughout the Cold War. The KGB had spies and informants in nearly every aspect of Western life and government, so much so that whenever the US tried to send spies into the Soviet Union, the KGB were usually ready to arrest them on the spot. Members of the Manhattan Project aided the Soviet
And I
Union.
read somewhere that the Russian leader now, Vladimir Putin, apparently he was in the KGB or whatever it was called. Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to clarify that. I don't, because yeah, I don't know. From what I've heard, apparently he was a part of like some government of the USSR, and apparently it was the KGB, which it's pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting to learn because I had no idea he was in any of that.
Union in acquiring the bomb. Some American officials believed they were on the wrong side. I'll sell you 3 secrets for $5 million. Okay, go ahead. The Allies are digging a tunnel under East Berlin to tap your communications. There's an American agent living at this address in Moscow, and sometimes, when I'm home alone, I like to put on my wife's dresses, sit in the corner, and cry for hours. Very interesting. In America, fear took hold during the Red Scare and the McCarthy trials. American values imploded as fear of communism collided with freedom of thought and expression, and communist kind of became a buzzword thrown around to describe anything people didn't like. Hollywood? Communist. Your next door neighbor's dog? Communist. When the grocery store cashier asks if you need a bag when you clearly can't carry 10 tubs of Baconaise in your hands? Communist. But one area in particular where the US had an edge over the Soviet Union was in its espionage technology. In particular, U-2 spy planes flew across Russia carrying out surveillance from the skies. There was a nasty incident in 1960 though, when one was shot down and Khrushchev was furious. Who the hell is this? He's a high-altitude weather enthusiast who flew off course. Okay, that sounds plausible. Wait a minute! Why does he have a gun and a poison needle? Because he's a very naughty high-altitude weather enthusiast. But much to America's concern, the Soviet Union appeared to be ahead in the space race. Everyone freaked out when Russia launched the world's first satellite, and then they actually sent a man into space. Even worse, there also appeared to be a missile gap in the Soviets' favor, and Khrushchev was so confident that he even allowed the US to set up a technology exhibit in Moscow, attended by a certain Vice President Richard Nixon. Check this out. We have color TV. Yes, but we've been to space and can obliterate you with our massive nuclear arsenal. Check out this vegetable peeler.
Fucking hell.
Tensions increased further when both sides upgraded their atomic bombs to hydrogen bombs, and after West Germany was allowed to join NATO.
And you see, at this point, they're not even like usually on both sides. They don't really think about the people. They just think about what they want and what's their outcome. It's because usually with political things like that, at first I'm pretty sure at some point they do think, oh yes, we're doing it for them, but no, at some point it gets to an extent of, okay, this is what works for me and this is what doesn't work for me. And yeah, it would have been a real struggle for what the civilians on both sides especially would have went through, especially on the civilians in the USSR. It was pretty brutal from what I've heard, because they were punished severely from what they explained in this video so far, like putting them in work camps, executing them. There's been a lot of cases of that because simply because they weren't following the rules, I guess, quote unquote. I don't know, but yeah, it was I would say it was even more brutal for the civilians to go through it, of course.
NATO in 1955, Khrushchev set up the Defensive Warsaw Pact, strengthening the military ties between the Soviet Union and its satellite states. In 1960, Americans decided they wanted a new president who would be tough on communism, so they elected John F. Kennedy. The Soviet Union was advancing its technology,
Kennedy!
but it was also bleeding its coffers dry, and all of the money was going towards the military, not the people. Life under communism was still as hard.
Yeah, and you see, this is what I was talking about. They're not even thinking about the people. And it was especially hard on, like, the Eastern European countries that were influenced by the Soviets, like Hungary, Romania, Poland. Like, it's, they're still their own independent country, but, they still had to be ruled under the the Soviets, which was pretty stressful. And because as a leader of your own country, you would want to make decisions for yourself and um give your people what you want or what they want or whatever. And it's it would have been very difficult to balance, okay, this is what I want to do and this is what they're making me to do, I guess. I don't know. I'm only talking about this from the perspective of I guess the leaders of those countries that were influenced by the USSR and the communism and all that. Because in the beginning they said, "Oh, yeah, you're in control of Eastern Europe. That was a bad idea." Bad idea. Because some of those countries didn't even have a choice because of that, because of whatever the hell happened there. So yeah.
As ever, and Berlin remained a thorn in the Soviet side. The contrast between the economically prosperous West and the struggling East was clearer day by day, and East Berliners were still able to freely travel to the West. Now, many of them were deciding to stay there. Millions defected to West Germany via West Berlin, causing Eastern factories to lose workers and taking a heavy toll on the economy. Soviet leaders decided this couldn't continue any longer. First, Khrushchev tried this: leave West Berlin, or else. Or else what? Or else I'll be really mad at you. Yeah, no, we're gonna stay. Listen, man, West Berlin is ours, East Berlin is yours. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Kennedy felt pretty good about his
This is
show
what
of
I was
American
talking
resolve.
about, yeah.
But wait a second, did you catch that? Let's replay it.
East Berlin is yours.
Tisk,
Uh-oh,
tisk.
Kennedy just told Khrushchev that the USA wouldn't interfere in what the Soviets did with their section of Berlin. So Khrushchev came up with a new idea. We're gonna build a wall, and it's gonna be a big, beautiful wall, and it's gonna keep out all the Mexicans.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, sorry, it's gonna keep in all the
Oh,
Mexicans.
fucking hell.
On August 13th, 1961, Berliners woke up to find their city divided into two, with
Berlin
barbed wire
Wall,
and guards
yeah.
blocking the border between East and West.
Oh, well,
Over
this is
time,
before
a
the
wall
Berlin
was
Wall.
constructed
Yeah, yeah.
throughout the city.
The Berlin Wall,
Families
yeah.
were torn apart. Thousands would risk their lives escaping over the wall, and hundreds would die trying. To the despair of
My mum
Berliners,
remembers,
the West were
and
unable
even
to
my
do anything
grandparents
about
remember
it.
the
But the
Berlin
wall
Wall
did
when
put on
they
full display
took
the
that-
failure
when
of the communist
they were
system.
able to
As
cross it,
Kennedy
and
said,
apparently they-
democracy is not perfect.
Apparently they said it was one of the biggest moments in history at the time, especially because they've been families and friends have been separated for so long that sometimes there was sometimes there was families that were like in their 70s and 80s. They were some families died without getting to finally meet their family from the other side that's able to cross, which is pretty sad. And and then yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with this, but especially with something like this and separation and stuff like that, and people not having the chance to see their family, it's quite difficult. Quite difficult. It was yeah, not good. Not good at all. Hopefully this doesn't happen again. Or wait. I'm just kidding.
Perfect. But we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in. As part of the agreement between the two sides, US diplomats were still allowed to travel to East Berlin, but suddenly, East Berlin...
And they had to agree because, they didn't want another major war to break out. So it's, it's a struggle to keep the peace and also to stand up for yourself. So it's, yeah, it would have been tough for the US to, to balance those kind of things, because, you want people to have what they want, but you also have to, keep the peace around, and yeah, it was, God, just thinking about it, it just makes it sound even more stressful, especially, even for the civilians and the people who lived around there. It was, not good. Not good. And the thousands that risked their lives just to get over that wall, just have some ounce of freedom. It was heartbreaking, of course, because they were fighting for what they believed in. They were fighting for what they wanted, and they knew that their government was corrupted. But yeah, after the Berlin Wall was I guess, opened and people were able to cross it, it was a moment in history where it was, okay, everything's fine now. And, yeah, I guess what's more heartbreaking about it was the amount of time that they were separated, because it was like, I think it was like 3 decades they were separated, because I'm pretty sure the Berlin, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure the Berlin Wall was constructed, I think, in the early 60s. I'm pretty sure and people were able to cross it in 1990 or 91. I'm pretty sure. I don't know, one of the two, but yeah, it was yeah. Yeah.
Crossing
I don't know where I was going with this. I think I was just highlighting the fact that you know, you could write a freaking, if you were a civilian in freaking East Berlin, like, you could write a fucking novel about how the people were trying to escape and how corrupted the system was, and you know, you could, yeah, it was there was a lot going on.
guards started giving them the business, and Kennedy was like, nah. In October, the US rolled tanks up to the crossing point at Checkpoint Charlie as a show of strength. The Soviets did the same, and the two were in a standoff. They stayed like that
And I'm pretty sure this is when World War III nearly happened as well.
for 16 hours, and the world braced for nuclear Armageddon. Thankfully, though, Kennedy called Khrushchev directly and was like, hey man, this is getting way too hot. How about you back your tanks up by an inch and we'll do the same? Sounds good. Okay, how about you back your tanks up by another inch and we'll follow suit? Alright, hey, you want to do another inch? And they both very slowly inched away from the apocalypse. Phew, let's hope that's the biggest crisis of my presidency.
Nope.
It wasn't.
Well, guys, that was, I'll react to part 2 in a minute, but that was, Oversimplified, doing a video of the Cold War. Yeah, it was, intense to learn, and, intense, facts, especially in our history. But I'll see you all next time when I watch part 2. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. See you, everyone, and, subscribe to Oversimplified. Bye, guys.